not, you know, we wouldn't all of a sudden know everything. Yeah?
Isn't this presumed, I mean, isn't Leibniz presuming that rationality is a good thing?
Yeah, all those guys, you know.
I mean,
Descartes.
The existentialists, I mean, their thing was irrationality.
Mm-hmm.
They thought that human beings were by nature irrational, and this was the way it was supposed to be.
Which I am more in that direction myself. So yeah, I mean, how good does being rational, can it really happen? I mean, even if you really make every effort to focus on the principles of inference and empiricism and so forth that we studied this semester in this class, still, how much do you really know? Is there really such thing as rational thought? And that's, you know, I don't know. My tendency is to say, there may be, but are we ever there? No. You know.
Not as a whole, not as society, but I can say that, I mean, individualistic rationalism probably does exist. I mean, like me, yeah, everybody falls victim to, you know, generating hypotheses, and you know, my whole take on it is I've always been this way since a kid. You know, I have to see it. I mean, the bottom line is this: I'm not going to go based upon what somebody tells me. If I don't see it, and if I can't construct some sort of experiment with on my own accord to test it out, I don't believe it. And that's it. I mean, it just remains up in the air to me.
And another thing is, here's a really good one. So being rational or following reason. I mean, if you study the ultimate level of the cosmos, all of our logical laws and our material conceptions about how the ordered universe works all fall away. So that, and it almost is like the physical world is a contradiction. Remember we've talked about that this semester? You know, solidity isn't really there. Time and space, those things can't be described in coherent terms. I mean, if you try to describe motion, you know, something like this, you can't do it. Remember, did we talk about the bullet, the glowing bullet? If you shoot a glowing bullet in a dark room, it looks like a streak across the room, and that streak doesn't exist. But if you have a camera that can take really quick photos, you say almost instantaneous photos, they'll take a picture of that bullet still. So motion is stillness. Does that make any sense? No. That sounds like Zen. The real philosophy that describes everything. So quantum physics leans towards irrationality. Description of the material world fails. Ancient Greek philosophers knew that descriptions of the material world don't work. Most of the Eastern philosophies are in this direction, suggesting that you know, ultimate reality, just like quantum physics, is not something that's describable in rational terminology. So I don't know. I mean, I tend to be on that side of the street, and thinking that when you have moments of experiential awareness of a non-rational base of reality, like Zen philosophers and quantum philosophers talk about, you almost start to realize that the whole idea of reason and rationalism might not have been, you know, it. But you were saying, well, hang on one second. You were saying something.
Yeah, just.
And what is, if I ask one of you, define rational or reason? Let's just give it a try and see what happens. Somebody, give it a shot. No, we'll see in just a second, Alice. Somebody define rational. All you're going to do is you're going to start defining things in empirical terms, or an attempt. Okay. So just be rational. That's to follow the laws of the material universe and to create your models of reality with those in mind. Okay, come on. We just got done saying that's the problem. Okay? And there's two issues with that. One, can that be done? Okay? Because once you describe things in material terms, there's always 10 more questions that just open up. Okay? And then the second problem is those don't seem to make sense anyways. Okay? Because the reason is because the material world doesn't make sense. All right? You know, just like I said with motion is stillness. Or solidity is non-solidity. You know, if you study the little pieces that make this board up, you find out they don't have solidity. So all kind of non-solid entities make up solidity. You know, that's so the whole thing. I mean, so did anybody have an intent? I sort of answered the question myself. Yeah.
I was just going to say, rationalism and reason is based based upon sight, the sight alone. I mean, true rationalism and reason. Okay, everything else is a theory. It's hypothesis. I mean,
that's you said sight. You mean like eyes?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Good.
Straight up.
See, because these are based on sight, especially this one. But it's not. It's a sort of with the mind's eye.
Right.
Not the eyes of. I mean, like a Zen philosopher will say, you don't need your eyes. Just close them or rip them out or something. You know, they haven't helped you. They don't tell you what's real. And then the quantum philosophers, you know, Bohr and so forth, their reasoning agrees with that a bit. I'm not saying literally. They would suggest to rip out your eyes or not use them or something. So anyway, I interrupted you. Yeah, I was thinking about what your comments in the last class. Those were some good comments. That one class you were talking about that. And math is sort of held, and we had in the last class, it was number 2. I mean, but really, I bet you if we knew really the way the cosmos worked and it's real mathematics, it wouldn't look like 2 + 2 = 4. I bet you it would be completely a different order of mathematics, which makes this seem not even relevant, and it's a different kind of thinking. What's my evidence for this? Well, quantum physics.
Right.
I mean, what are the 2 things that are the most real? The most real thing to you is your consciousness. Okay? But somebody try to define it. Give me couple statements, the most minimal. Remember we talked about hypothesis creation last time? Give me a couple hypotheses. Give me a couple statements that give you a hypothesis for what your consciousness is. None of you are going to be able to do it. Not even a few bare bones, minimalistic statements. Okay? So, but it's the only thing you've ever known. It's the most empirically real thing to you. It's what you've always seen the world through. So it's the most real. So what's the second most real thing? Well,
The world around.
Maybe, let's say the world, I was going to say quantum particles. Something you've never seen. Or unless you're a nirvanic Buddhist.
Right.
You know, so to speak, you know.
You achieve nirvana.
Well, in my opinion, the nirvanic Buddhist is witnessing. They've got some kind of eye mechanism inside them. Actually, one of our symbolic logic problems around
Sort
here.
of Mayans.
Well, yeah, Theosophists, this has been around. I mean, quantum particles, these are the only things that the whole physical world, this is an amazing paradox, okay? The physical world is supposed to be real. It's supposed to be governed by laws. If you analyze them just a little bit, they all fall apart as we've been discussing all semester. And so what's left? Quantum particles, which are consistent, which are scientifically verifiable to act as our models say they do. But they obey paradox. Okay? So the real is paradoxical and not explainable in both cases. Now the world, Zach said the world, what's the next most immediately known thing to you? Somebody trying to explain the world then. Give me a hypothesis. What is the world? First thing all of you are going to say is matter. And I'm going to say, define it, give me a model of what it is. And as soon as you try to do that, you're done. Because you're going to say something like 3-dimensional volume. And I'm going to say, oh! Explain that and then your history, because you're going to fall right into the quantum paradox of how things without volume compose volume, things without solidity compose solidity, and so forth. Yeah. So this is big stuff. Go ahead.
Somebody says the world is consciousness.
Oh, I kind of hold that position.
Yeah, no, that's what I said.
Okay, that would avoid the. There's a lot of different theories out there. Panentheism. Or panpsychism. Those are both good ones. Pantheism, idealism. What are some Buddhist? Am I missing some Buddhist? And they're really nirvana. Some ideas of nirvana or Brahman, or Brahman. You know, not all. These are very popular, and even some quantum philosophy actually, as well. Says get rid of the matter idea and all these paradoxes go away, and it's totally, that's the way to go. So there's all these philosophies out there which either downplay matter to some degree or won't discuss them and want to avoid this paradox. A philosophy or science that relies on matter is going to run into brick walls. Okay, so you have philosophies like these: pantheism, panpsychism, panentheism, idealism, nirvana, Brahman. You know, a lot of these are in that direction to some degree or another. Do you have something else?
Yeah, just the comment that the world is matter on a quantum mechanics level. It's a sieve, right? Solid is not solid.
Yeah.
And
Your eyes are lying. So empiricism fails.
And what appears to be...
Or else it's a lower level empiricism. Maybe there's a higher level empiricism, okay, that we, remember that, did you ever see my UCLA talk, Andy?
I haven't seen it yet.
I refer to neuronic empiricism. I say there's two orders of experiencing, matter or or quantum. You can actually see quantum stuff as a type of experience, type of empiricism. I call it neuronic empiricism. So maybe materialistic empiricism fails, and nirvanic empiricism, something like where you understand that the cosmos is consciousness, some kind of consciousness. So maybe if there's a God that's creating everything, that's consciousness. You exist, you're consciousness. There's a cosmos out there, it's consciousness. So there's systems of consciousnesses interacting, and there is no matter. That'd be the idea. That's very strong. That's where you get rid of all these paradoxes. Then basically you have to say that, okay, our understanding of things has to be non-materialistic. And we have to come up with different orders of mathematics and so forth to understand all that. And there is evidence for this. Huge evidence for this, okay? DNA has what's called junk DNA. Non-coding DNA. Who's heard of junk DNA? Most of your DNA is just this stuff that scientists call junk. Okay, it doesn't code. They think it doesn't code. It doesn't compose the morphology of your body. It doesn't contribute to that. Okay? And so they refer to it as junk, which is very poor. It shows the pre-established agenda before, doesn't it? Guess what scientists found in the early 1990s? I think it was 92, and this was published in the journal Science. They found the most staggering thing imaginable. And most of your DNA is this junk. Okay? I don't know what the percentage is. 90% or 80% or something. They found, of all things, a pattern in it. Okay? And guess what the pattern was of? The rudiments, you'll like this, you might know what this is. The rudiments of human language rules. This is in the journal Science, the most prestigious academic journal in the world. And they went into huge details. A short article, they went into huge details, saying they've applied all these computer programs to it. And sure enough, there's one language code, sort of language map, that maps the rudiments of all human language. And junk DNA has the exact same pattern. Exact. It matches up computer to computer. Okay. Is there a bigger story? No. Huh? Well, this would be, apparently, if you could measure this and I could measure it, if we could do that. Right now it's just somebody's telling us. But if we could go measure it, it would be very empirical. Because, I mean, if you have, something with all these properties here and something with all these properties here, there's huge correlations between them. Very strong analogy. I mean, in this time we're talking about millions of analogies with basically no exceptions. So what's the point here? Language is an aspect of consciousness. So the cosmos has little signals, patterns, that have to do with consciousness all over. Well, all of a sudden this is a train wreck. The world is matter. Now we're talking about idealism, the idea that the world is consciousness to some degree. Oh, and we're finding little signals around that pieces of consciousness are encoded into matter. Here's another one. Quantum physics. There's what's called quantum chaos. And basically there's lack of order in the quantum world. And they found a pattern last year in quantum chaos for the first time. Guess what the pattern was of? The golden ratio. A non-spontaneously generated ratio. It's not like pi or something that just appears in, like the sun exhibits pi, because it's a circle. It's not like that. It's something that has to be, it doesn't appear there spontaneously like that. It's a product of some mathematical geometry or something. And it was of the golden ratio. Okay? Well, that's this implies thought, intelligence. So again, in the quantum domain, this place where you shouldn't have these patterns, you've got the most sophisticated pattern emerging. Does this prove this? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how this is a disaster, the world as matter is a disaster, and then these other things show up. Yeah?
It sounds like they're discovering some of the old alchemical, because that
Yeah.
Fibonacci code is like
Fibonacci series, yeah.
totally through the entire series in alchemy and
Mm-hmm.
theosophy and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's starting to sound like science is a version of witchcraft.
Well, I mean, the golden ratio is everywhere in science. I mean, the obvious examples are pine cones and sunflowers. You know, you look at the sunflower and it's got this interesting spiral that you can see. I mean, but there it goes much further than that, hurricanes and galaxies, and it's at every level, quantum to the galaxies and so forth. So there's two, as far as I can tell, that implies intelligence. So I think you have two options. One of these philosophies is right, that the universe is consciousness. Consciousness, what does it have? It has things like emotion and thought, intelligence, and language. So we see this encoded in the cosmos. So the cosmos is consciousness. Or there's a second possibility that there's another intelligence behind the cosmos that's creating the cosmos to be like, to have those codes. So you're still, in both cases, locked into what exists are systems of consciousness. You know, so
brain function. All right, brain function. There is so much of our brain that we do not utilize, and when it's all said and done, how can one actually define brain function? How can one actually even define your senses alone? Thought.
Yeah.
So you can't.
yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah, define your experience of seeing greenness from the leaf.
Right. That's why I argued so bad.
You were not going to do it in this framework. The real stuff, think of this, the real stuff is not matter. We talk in terms of matter. None of it's definable, and all of it, if we try to describe it, we can't. It's all ineffable. It means it's beyond language. Everything in your reality is ineffable. You've just been taught that it is, it just means can't be put into words. Not explainable and with verbiage. And that's everything.
Right.
So we need a higher order, I've been thinking about this for years, we need a higher order of math, higher order of experiencing, a higher order of language to actually grasp the real patterns of nature, the real things.
I actually think, to be honest with you, I believe that we need a more simplistic form of language.
Higher means simplistic, yes.
Yes, because simple is always better. You know, when it's all said and done, if you stop and look at it, like I said last class, if you break down society and give a, let's say, a function of how we should all operate. Not to say that we should not be free thinkers and that we should not try and theorize, and we should not try and discover. But if we ran our lives based upon two simple categories, which is one would be empirical, the other one would be theory. Okay? Instead of religion, instead of everything else. Someone wants to believe in Zen, someone wants to be a Catholic, someone wants to be a Muslim.
Well, apparently Zen is devoid of belief. It's only experiential.
I understand, I'm sorry, I should say belief. Okay? But when it's all said and done, if you want to break it down into those two categories, I think everything would be much more simplistic. And I honestly think that we would come up with more answers and take them out of the theory category to put them into the empirical category. You know?
Yeah, great.
People just try to complicate it with bullshit and sophistry, and they try to impress their beliefs. And what is the correct term? Is it undisciplined theory?
Yeah, remember undisciplined theorizing we talked about last time? I like the way that worked. That was just off the cuff.
And
that was a good way to put it.
I believe that the mass of everything that's out there as far as theories are, for the most part, undisciplined.
Real quick, Andy.
Yeah, what is the remainder in the so-called junk DNA? I mean, what is it? I don't have.
Oh, it's just more of those bases, AT, whatever.
So it's like
but it apparently just sits there. They think and doesn't do anything.
For these other aspects of.
Oh, okay. You're asking me what do I mean? They say it's junk, so that means don't go there. It doesn't code for your morphology, your body structure, and your whatever you are.
Yeah, but you mentioned that for example, there's some coding for language rules, some coding for other kinds of creatures.
Well, the code, it's not coding for language rules. The code of language, whatever it is, you probably know more about that than me, for sure. That pattern, if there's a pattern to basic language structures, is in there. The bases of junk DNA make up the same pattern. And apparently it's unbelievable. It's not just like, oh, it kind of looks like each other. No, it's, put it on the, you remember, like, what's the guy named Zip? You're the linguist, not me. Is that his name? Maybe I'm probably spelling it wrong.
I don't know his work, though. So.
Okay, well, apparently he studies the rudiments of language, and it's his. I'm speaking about what I don't know precisely here. The article refers to a bunch of several things like that. I can pull it up on the screen right now, on the computer, but do you want anybody want me to? Or
What's the title of the?
let me know what that is. Okay, 97% of our DNA is junk DNA, meaningless advertisements. Okay, this is a rather large science set which I've been to before. I don't know exactly if it's Australian or what it is. But you probably heard about the molecule called DNA, otherwise known as the blueprint of life. Molecular biologists have been examining it, mapping it, blah, blah, blah. 97% of it is junk. Blah, blah, blah. About 3% actually codes for amino acids, creates your body structure that you're familiar with. Molecular biologists call it junk. Yeah, here we go, Zipf's law. According to linguists, all human languages obey Zipf's law. It's a really weird law, but it's not that hard to understand. Start off by going to get a big fat book, blah, blah, blah. So scientists looked a very long time at a bit of DNA and made artificial words, breaking up DNA into words 3 rungs long. And they tried it again for words 4 rungs long, 5 rungs long, 8 rungs, so forth. And then they analyzed all these words, and to their surprise, they got the same sort of Zipf law, straight line graph of human DNA, which is mostly introns, as they did for human languages. So you can go check this article out. I just looked up junk DNA language patterns on Google. It was the 3rd hit, if you want to look at that. Somewhere on my site, I can't remember where it is the actual science magazine, science journal article scanned and put in there. But so I don't know how much a lot of you like this abc.net site. It's a rather large, science news site.
Do you know if they ran the same test on monkeys?
A lot of mysteries here, and academia is really looking away from
what you eat. Your properties change. Most gradually.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird things about DNA. It's it's almost like a crystalline structure, has vibratory crystal-like aspects to it. Well, crystal and vibration means sound. So is DNA a sound-oriented entity? Is that a coincidence, or does that mean something? There's so many big deals here, and the only thing I see academics studying is coding DNA to try to manipulate for industry, which is the small story. Annie?
I'm wondering if, this seems like a great research project.
Yeah, this is the big stuff.
Junk DNA isn't actually a hologram.
Oh, something.
All of creation.
Well, that's what actually, there's people who have written exactly that.
Yes.
I think Pribram is, I think.
He's out at Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the hologram. I think he's applied that memory model to DNA in ways that gets that similar stuff. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody else. But somebody out west. But yeah, that would be, I mean, the cosmos is fractal. That's as far as what we can see, the same structures and shapes emerge over and over. But it also goes into chaos mathematics. The same mathematical patterns that govern highway traffic, govern galaxy dynamics and the hydrodynamics of hurricanes. And the same mathematics shows up everywhere. Go read a book called How Nature Works this is a really good book, How Nature Works, by a guy named Per Bach. But yeah, that shows you how there's just, nature really is operating according to just a few mathematical principles in a lot of ways. So that's more or less a fractal structure where pieces of nature mimic each other. So that would be the first assumption I would have. Say that if you're finding this weird mixture in non-coding DNA, there's some fractal. Life is mirroring each other in some ways, but that's loose, so I'm not sure. Go ahead. Yeah, that would be interesting. Who knows what? I mean, if it's not studied, we don't know.
Right.
I mean, it needs to be studied. Then we can. Who would have ever guessed that this would show up in there? If you would have told someone in 1991, before this was discovered, tell the average scientist now who doesn't know this, because it was discovered, published in Science Journal, but it wasn't studied furthermore. Biggest discovery in the history of the universe, it would seem, just ignored. Okay, that's a problem. And they'll laugh at you. But then you can show them this article and say, you know what, you need to be a blank slate. Who knows what's going on with this? There's something huge lurking in there. Oh, I don't.
I don't get it. Does this spell out something, or?
No, it just employs language rules. The movie Contact, it kind of reminds me of some of this stuff.
Yes.
If you've seen that movie, you know, they take rudimentary mathematical rules and they assume that cultures across the cosmos, across galaxies, can communicate with each other with these rudimentary mathematical rules. And it works, and according to the story in the movie. I think that was written by Carl Sagan, that book. And so the idea would be that this is a mathematical pattern somehow. You know, there's only so many ways that creatures can communicate, so the bare rudimentary rules may involve a mathematical pattern, which, I mean, how amazing that it shows up. So I don't know if there's, you know, if there's a story written in, you know, to junk DNA. But all I know is what I've read, as you just saw, is that there's the pattern of language mechanics is there.
So we were